You know what DEI really stands for? Dumb, evil, indoctrination. Woke liberals spew it, corporate losers fall for it. But thanks to Trump, America is rejecting that trash. And I'm leading the fight to end it for good. I'm Andy Barr. It's not a sin to be white. It's not against the law to be male. And it shouldn't be disqualifying to be a Christian. I'm Andy Barr, and I approve this message to give woke liberals something else to cry about.
Welcome once again to American Christian or Christian American. I'm Sean Legacy, and I'm your host. If you haven't hit that subscribe button, join the family and help grow this channel. Also, if you like the video, please press the like button. So today I started out with a video, an advertisement by Andy Barr. So it was a little different. Sometimes I wait till the videos after, but this time I started it before. So let's talk about it. It's short, it's not so sweet, but it is revealing. So first of all, he talks about DEI. Now, let's be clear here. Many of the things he's talking about are for people who are uneducated, who are very racist, who believe a lot of the garbage that's put out by these people who want to direct them down a particular path. So he says DEI is evil. What is DEI? Diversity, equity, and inclusion. Diversity, equity, and inclusion allowed people like African Americans, also women, to get an interview where they were once not even allowed to get an interview. It gives them a chance to get in there. Now, if they're not qualified for the job or qualified to go into a particular training program, they're still not going to get in. Diversity, equity, and inclusion does not put unqualified people in there, although they will lie about it constantly. It certainly does not discriminate against white people unless you think white people are superior and anything coming down to where an even level playing field is discrimination. That's the only way it can be discriminatory because white people have controlled everything. Now let's also talk about the fact that it's not a sin to be white. Well, no one was saying that, but I will say it to a point because the term white is a social construct. Meaning that we weren't always referred to as white. We were basically Germans and British and Italians and Spanish, and we were fighting wars against each other. There was no concept of white. There was no idea of whiteness. We just were lighter skinned people. So really we are Europeans, descendant Europeans who came to America, who are now Americans, but we also came from Africa like everybody else. We changed, and then we came to this country. But the term white, I don't call myself white anymore because it is a term that was created by the elite and the powerful in the formation of this country. Why? Because you had the enslaved people, African people enslaved, African Americans, now referred to today. Also, you had indentured servants, which was white people who were a little bit above slaves, but they were still being oppressed. You had all the money and the power and everything in a small group of people's hands. Well, they could see that there would be a problem if these people joined together, and there were uprisings, but it hadn't become to what it could have become. So they changed a few things around. They changed it. We're no more indentured servitude. You're too good for that. They allowed Caucasian people to own some land and to even vote as long as they were male and as long as they were property owners. And so they referred to Caucasians as white people who were better than those black people. Those black people are inferior to you. So they created this whole notion of whiteness, even creating the slave patrol, giving white people who had nothing a badge, made them feel powerful, didn't pay them a whole lot, but they become part of the slave patrol, which is today has changed its name to your local police department. That is exactly where it came from. Things have changed a little bit, but there's still hidden things in the system that cause all the problems that we've got going on today with police departments, because that's where it came from. And it was based on whiteness. So he says that it's not a sin to be white. Well, I say it's not a sin to be European or anything like that. But being white, if you really understand the term, I think there's a problem with it. Because the whole concept of whiteness is that of superiority, that of I'm better than you, that everything belongs to me and nothing belongs to you. So that's what he's telling people there. He's continued to perpetuate the lies of racism. He also said it's not a sin to be male. Okay, no, it's not, of course. But when you have a society that was formed around being male, that even women were subservient to that, white women were subservient to it, however, they were better than those black people, right? So even with that, they are, they're saying that men were superior. Nobody is saying that men are inferior today or that there's anything wrong with being the gender male. It's just that men are not better than everybody else. Yes, we are different genders physically, we react a little bit differently, but that does not equate a difference in superiority or inferiority. Women are not just the child bearers or anything, or the homebody. Women can do a whole lot of things. So saying that what he's saying is that men are superior in many ways. Now let's deal with the idea of Christianity. It's not a sin to be a Christian. No, it's not. But what he supports is Christian nationalism. Christian nationalism, which goes back, has roots with many different denominations, but it really has a lot to do with Southern Baptist churches. Some were split off, and those churches were the evangelicals of this country, the basis of it. They were also part of the Christian nationalism. Their whole thing from the beginning of this country was segregation, racism, racial oppression. Many of them, when you took a look at the numbers of the Ku Klux Klan, the KKK in this country, the vast majority of those people were evangelical Christians. So they have not stood for Christianity. They've said the name of Christ. We've lied about the history, what Christ looked like, what the first people looked like. They've lied about all these things, and yet they say they're Christians. So you can have a whole lot of good things in there, but when you inject poison into it, nothing's good about it. And that's what Christian nationalism. Now, I'm a Christian. I believe in Christianity, but I believe what comes from the Bible, not what's filtered through Western eyes, not what's filtered through American ideals. And God doesn't change. We change. We distort more things. We make mistakes. We screw up. God doesn't change. But when you take the Bible and distort it and create lies out of it, then you've got a problem. So will people believe this man? Will people believe Andy Barr? Yeah, they will. Now, we looked at in the title or the introduction, it showed, if you could see it on the last slide, showed that the area is 44% Republican, 43% Democrat, and depending, those crossovers. So it's not that the whole area, Lexington and Richmond and near Frankfort area, are all strong Republican, and not all of them are Andy Barr supporters. However, it is a strong influence. And so why does he have a hold there? Because of ignorance. So let's look at a couple different other things, and let's talk about them. Let's tie this together.
Watch this video and let's talk about it.
19th is, what's happening to the white people? They have a Black Miss America. They have a Black college. They have a Black month. What do we have? And now they have Juneteenth. Yes, I understand there was slavery, don't get me wrong. But there was also a Holocaust, and that was more recent than slavery. But you don't hear the Jews saying, gimme, 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 gimme. What's the point of Juneteenth? What is it? I don't know.
I'm Dr. Michael H. Ford, and let's talk about what you just saw. So this woman asked the question, what's happening to the white people? She then said they have a Black Miss America, they have a Black college, they have a Black month, and now they have Juneteenth. And then poses the question, what do white people have? Saying that you don't hear the Jews saying, give me, give me, give me, give me. Okay, let's take this point by point. Point number one, remember, for decades, black women were excluded from the pageant entirely. Vanessa Williams became the first black Miss America in 1983, nearly 60 years after the competition began in 1921. Representation did not replace anyone, it corrected exclusion. Point number two, HBCUs were founded because black students were barred from white institutions. The Morrill Act of 1890 required segregated states to provide land-grant colleges for black students if they refused to integrate. Historically, black colleges and universities were not handouts. There were parallel systems built because access was denied. Point number three, Black History Month began as Negro Week in 1926, created by historian Carter G. Woodson to confront the systematic erasure of black contributions from textbooks and public memory. It expanded to a full month in 1976 during the nation's bicentennial. It exists because omission was policy. Point number four, Juneteenth marks June 19th, 1865, when enslaved people in Galveston, Texas were informed of their freedom. More than 2 years after the Emancipation Proclamation, it became a federal holiday in 2021. Juneteenth commemorates delayed freedom and the unfinished work of equality. Point number five, the Holocaust comparison. Jewish communities absolutely sought justice. In 1952, West Germany signed the Luxembourg Agreement, committing billions in reparations to Holocaust survivors and to Israel. Compensation programs, restitution funds, and formal acknowledgement followed. Black Americans enslaved for nearly 250 years in the United States have never received federal reparations for slavery. The promise of land redistribution in 1865 was reversed. Instead came black codes, convict leasing, redlining, exclusion from GI Bill benefits, and a racial wealth gap that persists today. This is not give me, give me, give me. This is unaddressed harm. This is history without repair. Recognition is not lost. It is not lost to tell the full story. It is not lost to honor delayed freedom. It is not lost to repair documented harm. It is not lost to expand the table. It is not lost when justice reaches everyone. Commemoration is not competition. Justice is not a zero-sum game. Healing starts with knowing. Follow for more.
Okay, looking at this woman here, I was going to do 2 videos together, but I decided to break them up. Looking at this woman here and her ridiculousness. And she talks about, what's the point of Juneteenth? What's the, what about white people and everything like that? What about white people? First of all, white people have everything. White people have always had everything in this country, or I like to say Caucasians, but in the way she's saying it, she's probably right, because white people consist of these people who think they're better than everybody else. People who go along with the superiority type of mindset. And so white people have controlled history, they controlled everything, how it goes, and everybody else is subservient. But when we're talking about a country working together, that everybody who is involved should get a chance in the decision-making process. So by allowing people, like for instance, Miss America, is whiteness the only thing that's beautiful? Well, yes, according to these people it is. Now African Americans enter the picture and you say, oh, well, why are they in this? Because they're human beings, because they participate. Now, I'm not a big person who likes beauty contests, because I think a lot of times it also is discriminatory in the sense of people who we think are more attractive and other people are not attractive, and we judge people upon their looks in more ways than just ethnicity. But if you're going to have a contest like this, all different shades of people, all different ethnic groups or different categories of human beings should be allowed to participate in this country, who live in this country, especially if they're citizens of this country, should be allowed to participate in it. And that is not discriminatory against the first people who started it. That it was discrimination before. The solution to allow other people in it is only to correct the problem of discrimination so that all people can be in there. And all people can be judged about beauty and everything else that is not biased because one person has lighter skin color or darker skin color. And, the video talks about these things too, how the Jews got all kinds of reparations, but yet African Americans never have got reparations, never have gotten a leg up for all the struggles they had to go through, and how white people made all this money on slavery. Those people are still around today who have billions of dollars. It started back in slavery. Many corporations that were there back then started their wealth back then, and they're wealthy today and strong today and still abusing people today because of slavery. So if you don't make it right by people who have been kept down by this, they're still being kept down. Instead, we're trying to take more away. All right, so Again, it's ridiculous. And then the point about Juneteenth. Juneteenth is celebrating the fact that some people in Texas, the slaves in Texas, were not told that they were free for 2 years though after it. Why shouldn't they celebrate the fact when these things came about? From all the suffering and struggle they had to go through. So this woman just shows her ignorance. And this is the classic person who will vote for Andy Barr and other people like him because they're ignorant, because they don't care enough to educate themselves. They believe all the silly stuff that's put out by these politicians who say what makes them feel good, because these people, when they're ignorant like this, a lot has to do with that they don't have self-worth inside of themselves. All they have sometimes is being white, a fictitious idea that doesn't really exist in reality. It only exists in this fictitious mindset that's been created to control people. So ignorant people like this a lot of times have self-esteem problems and things like that, or just if they don't have that, they have power struggle problems. I still think self-esteem comes in there to some degree, even if you don't see it the way you see it in somebody else. But when you remain ignorant like that, that's what you get. And that's who you get in office. People like Andy Barr. And Kentucky has a lot of this, unfortunately, but they also have Democrats who are trying to do something different. But there's so much ignorance here that's carried over from the South, from all these things. And there's ignorance all around the country, to be fair. But there is so much ignorance in Kentucky who continue to follow these people who don't want to change. And all they want to do is do harm to other people. Now, I hope that more people who think differently will not sit around and let them win by saying, oh, we can't do anything, because that's exactly what they want you to do. Sometimes the people who believe differently let people who, there's less people on the other side, but they're more active in voting and making decisions, where people on the other side are convinced they can't do nothing. And that's all part of the propaganda that they give. So when you don't vote, you give them the power. You give them the power to hurt yourself. You give them the power to hurt your children, your other family members, your grandchildren, and further on, you give them the power. Whether you're African American or Caucasian or anything else, because they're doing harm to all people. There may be more harm when it comes to African Americans. But the fact that we don't have health care in this country for everybody, that's harm to everybody. It's meant to focus on African Americans, but it's also harm to everybody. So if you're a Caucasian person and you're not thinking, you're just following along with this, all you're doing is hurting yourself because you believed all these lies when you could feel better about who you are. Now, this stuff didn't start just with common people. This stuff started with church people. Let's talk about something else here. Let's look at one more video. All right, so we're talking about this Alabama pastor who was fired in August 5th of 2016. He's fired from the church because he wanted to invite African American children to VBS, or Vacation Bible School. He actually was fired after a sermon. To give you a reference, he's from Butler, Alabama, which, if you look on Google Maps, you can find it. It's south of Montgomery a little south of Selma, but far west. It's closer to the Mississippi border than Selma or Montgomery, so it's a smaller area. But he was fired again. If you go into here, he did a lesson. He was a pushback because he wanted to bring these children in, but then there was also a lesson he did on how denouncing racism. And they say that wasn't the issue. But here, I give this man a lot of credit. He was a young man. As far as I read before, he was 26 years old. And the church denies it, but that's what he says he was fired for. So we'll talk about this a little bit more. But this is important stuff. It may not just happen, but it's happened in the 21st century here. So things haven't changed so much. So this young preacher, 26 years old, was fired from this church in Butler, Alabama, close to the Mississippi border. And he says he was fired because of racism, because the church didn't want to integrate young children. Then he preached a sermon on racism. And they said it was a sermon on hate. See, but they'll also say he was fired for other things, not that. Don't believe it. Because this is the history, folks. This is the history of how it works. All right? Deep in the South, racism, there's a Baptist church in the South where this is where racism came out. I'm not saying that every single white Baptist church out there, I can't say that for sure, is involved in the evangelical movement, but I'm going to tell you just about most of them are, because that's where it came from. And there have been separations among Baptist churches. So I don't want to say that every Baptist church out there is a problem. But what I am saying is that this is where where Christian nationalism began. And these types of excuses have been used all over. When people talk about racism happening and somebody else offers an excuse, believe that racism is happening. You think these churches in the deep South, especially in a smaller town, not in Birmingham, not in Montgomery, not, Mobile, although it can happen there too, but especially in these smaller towns, you think that this is not a racist notion? Of course it is. See, and then they said that what he preached was hateful. Oh, he was hateful because he was telling them that they were wrong, that they were sinning, that they needed to repent. So I give him all the credit in the world. He's a younger man who believed racism was wrong. He may not have everything right, but he's on the right track. And I give any time a white person speaks up for, he could have just been quiet so he can continue on his role. But he considered the gospel more important than just his job. So having a salary and whatever else did not overcome the fact that he knew what was happening was wrong. But you got these racist members. Now, does that mean everybody in the church was racist? I can't say that. But it is true that many of these congregations throughout the country, there are racist members. When someone stands up, if they don't get fired, there are many people who will exit, because there is still so much racism in this country, so much downright ignorance, so many people who use the Bible, twist it out of shape in order to justify their behavior, instead of letting God tell them how to change their behavior. You can't be lost when you sink yourself into hate. You can't be lost when you treat people like it. You can't be saved when you do that. See, it isn't about, in and out of the church. And God does forgive our sins, yes. But you can't really be part of God and follow God if you are hateful and evil towards people. Now, you may think there's certain behaviors that are wrong. You teach that in the Bible, fine. But how do you treat people around that? And then when it comes down to different ethnic groups, and you hate them just because of the color of their skin, something is wrong. That's not where it came from. And this is where they're so believing in this history that white people were first. And they put a white Jesus out there. They make films in Hollywood where everybody is white. Well, I'm sorry. They weren't Caucasians. They weren't light skinned. They were darker skinned people. We came later, folks. We only make up 15 to 18% of the population today. How do you think all the rest of the world came from us when we are genetically less than everybody else? We have less genetic diversity than everybody else, and yet we populate the whole world. And no, there was not a second creation in there. No, there was no curse that changed the pigmentation of people's skin, and it wasn't Ham who was cursed in the first place, even though it wasn't a skin change. It was Canaan who was cursed. Read your Bible, people. Don't believe just what people tell you, because there are history with God. Always people will use his word in order to mislead people for their own power and greatness. And even throughout the Bible, it warned that people would go astray. When do we start looking at God for what he says? And when somebody else says something, they might have some good things to say. You should always listen to a preacher and stuff, but not without looking at the Bible yourself, not without studying for yourself. Otherwise, we get to this total ignorance that Andy Barr is leading us to, that he wants to become a senator to replace Mitch McConnell. He wants to become another devil in the Senate. And yes, that's exactly what he is when he spews hate and racism will you support him, or will you support something more godly and something better? I personally don't believe in any of the Republicans. I have trouble with many Democrats. I think, though, we have a better chance with Democrats. What I'd like to see this country do is abandon corporate Democrats and go for progressive people. Does that mean that everybody who's progressive is going to be... John Fetterman's not a great guy. But we have a better chance at getting people like that, and then we can vote them out again if they don't prove themselves. But when you take a corporate Democrat or a corporate Republican, they're beholden to somebody else. You need to start looking at people who don't take money from other people, who actually have a chance at talking about what's good for the people. However, even a Democrat will give you better chances than these corporate Republicans. I wish we had two parties that we're able to consider, but I don't believe we do. I think the Republican Party has always been about control, always been about power, and they really don't believe in democracy because they try to break down so people can't easily vote. They make it harder and harder for people to vote. They have always tried to control the voting atmosphere, and they have gerrymandered so it favored Republicans. And before they were Republicans, they were Democrats before FDR. So sometimes people change names, but it's the same package. Sometimes people change addresses, but it's the same group of people. They do the same things. What will you do? What will you think? What will you say? And will you think for yourself and stop saying, what do white people have? The Caucasian people in this country have everything. That doesn't mean we don't struggle. That doesn't mean we don't have problems. But really, folks, stop believing this garbage and start appreciating individuals as individuals. Don't put them into I'm going to pick from this group only. If an individual is an enriching person, cares about other people, relish that, no matter what they look like. And start listening to people. Start talking to people. Stop beating yourself up and having low self-esteem and thinking that just because I'm white, oh, I must be better. No, you're not. But you're also not inferior. You have to see yourself who God sees you to be. But if you don't relish and connect with what you're supposed to be, you will continue to be ignorant in this country and continue to perpetuate racism and everything else. Until the next time, I hope to see you again on American Christian or Christian American.